welcome to the Policy Times evening show, India Policy Show. Today we are 1 hour ahead because of the time difference with our friends connected from across different part of the world, and we are back. We will talk about a very important issue. We know our viewers, you are more used to some sensitive issues, but we thought and realized that it is our responsibility to bring the right question and right answer so that we together build a stronger and more resilient society, which is helpful for all of us and which benefits for all of us. So, Policy Times, in partnership with Micropollutant Research Center, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, University of Tun Hussein on Malaysia, we have decided that we will come up with a series of discussions on sustainability, climate change, and other issues. Yesterday, we celebrated the entire world celebrated Earth Day, and we were also discussing with some experts from Indonesia, Malaysia, and other countries. And the purpose was why are we celebrating Earth Day? What is the relevance to understand Earth Day, and what if we don't take care of the kind of damage the environmental issues can bring to our life, to our economy, and to our society. So, firstly, without taking much more time, as we are talking today, the death toll due to corona, the total infected cases have crossed 2.6 million across the world, worldwide. United States being the worst hit, again crossing 800,000 plus cases. Other countries remain Spain, Italy, and also Iran. Talking about India, India has also crossed 21,000 plus cases with 680 plus death. Globally, there are 183,000 death we have seen so far, which is not yet, the situation is not yet under control, but many countries are properly taking care of and progressing in terms of fighting this corona. Now, in my panel today, we are going to talk about the global air quality trends during COVID-19 and how to maintain good air quality. Now, I just want to welcome Dr. Wesam, who is the also who is a professor at Micropolitan Research Center, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment. We together will moderate it. Dr. Wesam, welcome to our show, and thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you so much.
being.
Thank
I
you so much for
also
the engagement.
I also want to welcome Professor Omer, who is the Environment Engineering Department faculty at the Imam Abdulrahaman bin Faisal University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Professor Umar, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Ammar Muhammad Rashid joining, Managing Director, AMR Environmental Group from Malaysia, joining us. Mr.
Thank you for having me, Akram. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Mahadi, I think he's coming back. Mr. Mahadi Ismaei'ly is the environmental activist and president of GoGreen. And we have Dr. Acep Purqon, who is the head of international affairs at Institute of Teknologi Sumatera, ITERA, Indonesia. So thank you so much for joining us. Couple of facts, my viewers. Why should we talk about air pollution? Let me give you some facts, and I think we'll be back to our experts to talk on that. According to a 2016 OECD report, and I am telling you, my viewers, that you as an individual should know this and should understand the importance and relevance of air pollution. Air pollution is one of such important, damaging factor in the society, which has a huge human as well as economic cost in the society. OECD 2016 report says that by 2060, 1% of 1 to 3% of GDP loss will be there. A Greenpeace report as well as OECD report says that if we don't take care of the air quality issue, 1 to 3% of the world GDP will suffer from it, or economic loss we will observe, we will see. The same thing for China is 2.6%. I want to directly come to the Greenpeace data. It says that 3.3% GDP loss or $2.9 trillion GDP loss would be there if we don't stop air pollution activity. In terms of human death, it says that, or also on the economic front, China, United States, and India observes or witnesses highest GDP loss with an estimated cost of $900 billion for China, 500 to $600 billion for United States, and $150 billion for India, which is 5.4% of India's GDP, which is a humongous amount. Now, talking about this, there are more than 5.4 to 5 million people observe premature death due to air pollution, due to environmental issues, of which 3 to 4 million die premature death due to air pollution. So this is the magnitude or impact of air pollution if you don't observe or if you don't take proper precaution and action on this. Dr. Wesam, welcoming you. I just want to have opening remarks about this series of discussions that we are going to hold.
Sir Akram, thank you so much again for the arrangements, and thanks also for the panelists. So the idea when we think about organizing such talks, because now we have a momentum, a positive momentum on the during the COVID-19 era, that we have a positive changes in the environment, especially a lot of initial findings that there is an improvement in the air quality, right? And we can notice that in different countries, and it mainly started in China. So the idea was trying to talk about those issues and bring people from the academia, from the industry, from the NGOs to talk together and try to find common ground so that they might be able to formulate with the policymakers strategies to try to maintain those positive momentum. Maybe I just wanted to add something, one point which you mentioned, why we need to talk about it, why we need to act about on the air quality issues. Because, for the last year report on the global air quality status in global, this is very evidence, I mean, and stated in many studies. We have 7 million death cases annually globally because of air pollution, right? So now, we are talking about COVID-19 and the cases, positive cases, and the deaths, and we have like much lower numbers of deaths. But now annually we have 7 million deaths because of air pollution, and many call it as a silent killer. So it's not only about the economical impact on the countries, right? We are talking mainly about the public health, and public health, we are talking about the death, we are talking about the losses as well. So it is a crucial issue to be tackled, to be talked about, and try to find strategies, try to formulate strategies on how to reduce this emission, to maintain the air quality good, and also to protect the public health.
Absolutely. Coming to our experts now, Professor Omar, I would like to come to you and then I'll come to all. The very basic question, there are a lot of news in India, it says that 30% of the air pollution has gone down due to the massive isolation and lockdown has been happening across the, if you can unmute and then we start. What is your view? There are a lot of researches which I'll come later, which is connecting air pollution and the high death due to COVID-19. But first, I want to take your comment that how is this isolation and lockdown impacting air pollution?
Thank you, Mr. Akram and Dr. Wesam, for organizing such a event, which I believe I attended two, three events in the couple last days. One of them in Saudi Arabia, and there was two ministers, Minister of Education, Minister of Health, attending one of these uh, meetings regarding COVID-19 and its impact on globally and locally. First of all, as you mentioned in the beginning in the introduction, Dr. Wissam, that there is an enemy, invisible enemy, which is, I always call it, the air pollution is the invisible enemy. Other types of pollution, the solid waste, the wastewater, we can see it, we can smell it, so we can take action because it's from a static point of view, we don't want it. But for air pollution, it is rarely in very polluted city to see this fog, this a lot of pollution. Other than that, this invisible enemy, I can give you some numbers about the most developed world in Europe. So according to the EEA, European Environmental Agency, there is about 400,000 deaths per year in the European Union because of direct impact of air pollution. In their last report, 2019, most of the air pollutants they could control and they mitigated it, except three pollutants, which is particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and ground level ozone.
Right.
And they believe that these pollutants are mostly affecting human life, and this is might be the reason the high toll of death in the elderly people in Europe because of this air pollution. Coming to your question is about the percentage of reduction of air pollution because of lockdown. I would like to be here more scientific. Actually, the lockdown is mainly on road traffic for private cars and public transportation. For logistics, it is going on. Otherwise, we cannot drink, we cannot eat food. So this is another thing. For the
Absolutely.
energy production is still going on. So, for example, electricity production, and here in the Gulf region, production of drinking water using fossil fuel is still going on. However, if we compare the numbers from last, let us say, March and 2020 March, there is reduction. I can give you numbers on specific pollutants. It could go up to 40, 50% reduction in Europe. So yes, there is reduction because of this, but we should compare it scientifically, not with the previous month. So what I mean, if you compare March with January, for example, of course you will see dramatic decrease. But if you look to January and January last year, there is not much that difference. This is the idea I would like to
Okay.
share with you.
I'll come to you. I'll come back to you on other questions. Dr. Furqan, maybe I'll just to have your opening comments. What is the situation in Indonesia and how much it has impacted and helped in bringing down the air pollution?
Okay, thank you very much. This is
And maybe more emphasizing why should we talk about air pollution today?
yeah, I think it's a good topic for Indonesia as well because we have some serious problem about air pollution. Not only now, but long time ago, especially for several areas. Not all areas, but in industrial area, it's really a serious problem. And also we have a big problem also for fire forests. Every year something serious problem about this one. It's make become worse for the air pollution.
Hmm.
And regarding to COVID-19, it's also we try to make some analysis from some researcher in Indonesia, especially about the number. Of course, there are some interesting thing. For example, in Jakarta area, of course, Indonesia is big size. From west until east, it looks like US. Yeah, from west until east, the size is like that. The different only we have big islands, many islands, 17,000 islands. So it means it's related to mobility. We have a big problem with mobility and cultural activity. As you know, before Ramadan and after Ramadan, we have something big mobility.
Hmm.
This is also something a problem. But now government try to make a great effort to reducing about this COVID-19. And regarding to air pollution, some study tell us, for example, yeah, 28 years is the best Jakarta for the air pollution for several days ago. So it's a good thing. But of course, if we compare the number, it's not so significant reducing actually in general. Yeah. But of course, we have some impact for the reducing, but not so significant. Of
Mhm.
course, we have a get impact because we try to reduce some mobility, something lockdown in some area, and this is a good thing in term of air pollution.
Right. Mr. Amar and Mr. Mahdi, I want to come to you. Mr. Amar may start, begin your opening comments with how do, because you come from AMR International, coming from industry or NGO perspective, how do you view this air pollution issue as an opportunity to solve the problem? And what kind of solutions are you bringing on table?
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Akram. I think this issue has been a good topic to discuss about since the beginning, because not just during the coronavirus pandemic that we are facing nowadays, but just to mention to you that air quality is something that we should always concern about, because it's basically our life in itself, right? So I like what Professor and also Mr. Purqon mentioned just now regarding about the importance of this issue that we are talking about today. And the main one should be that air pollution is does not concern about transboundary issues, meaning to say that a pollution in one region or one state can actually impact the other. And some research that I have read so far mentioned that the pollution that's been caused in Asia is actually impacting the ones that are living in the northern hemisphere. So this is the kind of thing that we should look at, whereby like any other pollution in those aspects, say it noise, water pollution, and so forth, that one can be controlled within the boundary of each country in that aspect. But when it comes to air quality, you are looking at there's no boundary, nothing can stop it. The air moves every time. So this is the kind of importance that we should always think about and discuss. And one of the things and the key issues that it's important, besides discussing in this kind of platform, is actually to educate our young, and also to make sure that the public understand the importance of this. And I think based on this coronavirus issue that we are facing, globally nowadays, it's actually being an open mind concept to make sure that the public understand the full importance of air pollution in this aspect. Because to me personally, I do believe that corona itself is one of the air pollution parameters that we are looking at today. And besides that, we should always look at all the other aspects of pollution that's been caused by other factors and sources as well. So yes, I do believe that air quality is one of the major issue, because we have to have it, we have to live with it, we have to have it in order for us to live in this aspect. So that's why it is most likely the best and the most important thing that we should discuss about.
Excellent. Mr. Mahadi, you are the president of GoGreen movement, and also a green activist. How do you view, and we celebrate, the world celebrated Earth Day yesterday, how this Earth Day was different from others? Do you see some positivity coming out of it?
Yeah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. A very good evening to everyone, especially to all the learned speakers, and Mr. Akram. Yeah. Okay, right. Basically, indeed, we can see clearly the impact of the coronavirus. It's about a month, everything stopped under lockdown, under what they call this, they said Control Movement Act. We can see clearly the world, the earth healing by itself. So it seems to be that myself, from the background of business people and then environmentalists, we can see that we need something like this. At least we can see the result when everybody stop and everybody don't do nothing. The human people stay at home. You can see clearly the earth healing by itself. So what we discussed yesterday in the Earth Day with the ministry, with the friends from the GoGreen, what you call activists, we come up with an idea. Why not one day, if the government have the power and the policy, why not we could put something like Earth Hour, right? That's how we stop everything 1 hour for the electricity, and then why not for the other sector like transport, like maybe in the industrial sector or whatever that contribute to the pollution of the air. So this is something that really we need, and we learn from the situation and the coronavirus now. We need that kind of space to make sure the earth heal by itself, or else we are continuing to say, to talk about it, but the destruction or the pollution is still going on and getting worse and worse. So we must put a stop, or put some what you call indicator that this period must be stopped for a while, or else it's clearly that we are going to worse and worse. So coming to Malaysia's situation, based on the new Minister of Environment, put a really high commitment to look into this matter on all pollution, on all what you call something related to earth, to environment, so that the new policy will come up soon, that we are looking seriously, look after the environment. So we need more people, more organization, more, especially among the business people, because we aware that the business people, the way they do the CSR program is not really to the up to the one level that can contain the pollution. So it is just a merely activity to raise what we call the good image from the public, from the people downstairs on the road, to see that these companies or these corporate people, corporate giant, seem to be good enough, but in a way they are not contributing at all. In many cases that we study, we are dealing with them. Sometimes we meeting with them and we ask for certain thing, they cannot give more than what they can give. So means the polluter, especially among the business people, clearly that we can see, we need those people in the business sector really seriously come down to us, then work with us, so that we can strategize how to mitigate the pollution of the air, especially. So if this thing cannot be organized, see, for based on my experience, so I attended so many courses, seminars, courses. Towards the end, it's the same. The pollution is going on, and then the big question is, when is this business people, business community, one put a stop, and then we can see the result that the earth is healing by itself. For example, there is one river in Malacca, we call Sungai Malacca, River Malacca. Prior than this COVID-19, MashaAllah, it's really bad river. But not even 3 weeks, we can see clear the fishes is swimming around. And there's so many new species of fishes coming, and then all the birds, all they go to the river and without doing anything. Can we imagine
How did this
without doing
happen?
anything? Yeah,
Yeah. So how did this happen? Maybe I'll come later.
yeah, yeah.
First,
Okay,
I
thank you.
want to, so 2 points I really liked. One, as Professor Umar said, that you can't see, like if water is polluted, you can see it. If your neighbor is polluted, so you can see it. But
Yeah,
here is something you can't see in your visible eye, unless in exceptional circumstances that it is very dark and you can feel it. So one, you can't see it. The second point I liked by Mr. Ammar is that there is no transboundary for it. Any country irresponsibly creating pollution, the whole world or the whole neighborhood can suffer. Now, one important aspect I want to come, and then I'll invite Dr. Wesam to also bring some questions. A recent research says that 98% cities in low and middle income countries and 56% cities in high income countries do not meet WHO, World Health Organization air quality guidelines. That's a huge break of rules. And
true.
where, so my question here to all, and anyone who would like to answer first can easily unmute and talk. What are the major sources of emission, especially for the air pollution? Then why are countries not able to meet this? Why? How come 98% middle and low and middle income countries or cities are not able to meet this guideline?
Yeah,
So, would like
Okay.
Dr. Vesan.
Yep. Maybe let me just comment on. There is one point mentioned by Prof. Omar, which is very important. Yeah, we noticed that there is a reduction in the emission globally, right? But it is to some extent, because like for the last 1 month, I'm doing some monitoring, and even this afternoon, I was looking at the trends. Even some cities, for example, and this is very close to Prof. Omar. Now Al Khobar, it is unhealthy, and I check Wuhan now unhealthy. In the unhealthy level means the pollutants level is quite, it's beyond the WHO standards, right? So yeah, and we can see some improvements, but still, like it's in like it's a small changes. but we have to look at long-term strategies on how to integrate the efforts of the policymakers with the industry people, with the people from the NGOs, on how to formulate a strategy to maintain this reduction in the emission. Because like one of my concern, and maybe this is later on Mr. Ammar can have an answer on that. Like my concern is after they lift the MCO, the limitation on movements. So the industry will go back, will recover on a full capacity, right, and might increase the production, and then might be we will notice a higher level of pollutants because the production level will be will be even higher than the previous levels.
Yeah.
That's why we need kind of more long-term and strategic plans on how to maintain the good air quality.
Yeah. Actually, if you allow me, thank you, Dr. Wissam, for this notice. And Mr. Akram, you mentioned very significant point. Why is the most of the world is suffering from unhealthy air quality? And as I mentioned in the beginning, even in Europe, they could not maintain for the all European countries. They could not maintain the new deadlines, the new standards. This is a report submitted by the EPHA, the European Public Health Alliance. It's saying that for some pollutants like particulate matter and nitrogen oxide, ground level ozone, still there is elevated level. Now, there is different sources. Let us be frankly speaking. For example, for countries who are emerging, for industries in Asia sometimes, you find the pollution coming from low quality fossil fuel that is being burned like coal and others. But in Europe, they have different uh, source of pollution, which is the automobiles, mainly from diesel. So the discrepancy here is different. However, there is one significant thing that we should know also. For some regions in the Middle East, as Dr. Wissam mentioned, still you can find Kuwait, for example, it is extremely unhealthy in some times. This is because of naturally dust storm, which
True.
increase the PM 2.5 levels to unhealthy, sometimes extremely unhealthy levels. So we have a chance right now all the monitoring stations around the world, including ours here, we are monitoring what is happening. And we have a previous data. Now, we can predict also what is going on in the upcoming months based on this data. So I'm using some models and these things. I wanted just to go back. Why we are talking about air pollution? Why our main hot topic is COVID-19? Simply because that this is the first time you find that this spread, you can see live the spread of a pandemic every time you monitor it live. So this is because of globalization, the mobility of people, all the globe is connected with flights, so one virus can spread all over the world. This will draw our attention that we need a unified effort to fight these kind of pollutants. Coming back to air pollution, the virus is in the nanoscale. It is very, very tiny thing. It, it cannot, for example, be brought from Asia, Wuhan, to Saudi Arabia by, for example, wind. It cannot be because it will stay in the air in this weather condition for 3, 4 hours maximum. However, it needs a host so it can transfer. Now, we need another dimension, which is the in air quality or air pollution, we have two areas. One we call it indoor air pollution and outdoor air pollution. The main concern and the main uh, spreading cause for this pandemic is the indoor air pollution. Frankly speaking, there was misunderstood messages from top levels from WHO, from others, saying that the virus is not airborne. It cannot be, for example, go for 1 meter, 2 meter. As an engineer, we know that it is not that much simple. There is model that can predict how is these pollutants will go. We call it computational fluid dynamics, which can predict you in airplane, in surgery, in hospital, at home, how is these pollutants will spread. It's a complicated issue. We need all the efforts from the medicine, epidemiologists, from engineers to give us more stringent actions. As Dr. Wesam mentioned, we need to make strategic plans for future. We have to learn how to mitigate it and not to have another peaks, for example,
Right.
in other countries. So this is for
Good
now.
comment taken. Any
Yes.
other, Dr. Furqan, you would like to comment on what are the WTO guidelines and how do we actually, why can't most of the cities are violating those, are not able to meet those?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
enlighten.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's air pollution is still a serious problem. Before COVID and maybe after COVID also will be serious problem. So we have no wait for the COVID-19 actually, because it will be still serious problem for the future for the air pollution. That's why, as mentioned before about strategic planning, it's really important for our regional actually, yeah, because transboundary and its technology can solve and help to solve this problem. I think it's very important to something consortium between university in region, for example, in ASEAN, to go together to solve this problem and make push to policymaker about the important thing for reducing for the air pollution. It's really important because I think from academic point of view, it's really good pushing, yeah, from to government or policymaker, something like that. And we can solve, for example, yeah, collaboration. It's really important, collaboration. And from academic, because I come from academic thing, it really a good effort or good contribution from academic to reducing this air pollution based on the very strong consortium to solve the air pollution, something like that. I don't know. I think, yeah, of course, we have some strong academic leader in each country, but why we don't try to make some this consortium to, because something uh, to make more strong point, yeah, this is issue for our region, for example, and it make a good contribution, something like that.
Excellent. Mr. Ammar and Mr.
Yeah.
Mahadi, would you like to add something? I'll then invite.
If I Okay, thank you, Akram. If I could add the point that Dr. Wesam have brought up just now, which is concerning about how can the industry help after the or post COVID-19 incident that we are facing today. So yes, the question back that we need to ask ourselves is that if let's say, for example, we are looking at the WHO limit. When you talk about a limit, for example, it is somewhat of a threshold that we cannot surpass. All right. So I think everybody is clear on that, which means that in actual fact, the industry or any other what we call it ambient condition and so forth, we are able to live at certain threshold in that instance. So if you ask me, okay, after serving a few clients, which is wonderfully well committed towards the regulation and so forth, I would foresee that, of course, industry would commit fully into complying with all the necessary regulation at state level or internationally. But in this aspect, we have to understand that if one industry is creating a pollution that complies with the limit, but you have to look at other type of industries nearby as well that creates an accumulative pollution in this aspect. So how can you control? If, let's say, for example, you humbly ask me, I would say that if you would like to control pollution, you have to control from the sources of the pollution itself. Okay, even so that they are complying with the limits, but in cumulative effect in those areas, we have to also foresee whether it would impact the nearest residential or not. So in this kind of aspect, and I like to bring out the solution or basically the application that Professor Omar brought up just now, which is using a computational model, which is, sorry, we have a model called the app dispersion modeling that we can actually what call it get into place and model all these pollution sources and see the effect and also the distance, and you can even imagine that it can actually give you the coordinates of the maximum ground level concentration. And this is actually a norm in Malaysia for us to cite our industries to make sure that all our industries are not sited within a non-suitable area, especially near sensitive areas, uh, as like schools, prayer places, buildings, and so forth. So these are the kind of things and aspect that we need to look at. So coming back to the question, how can we solve this issue? And I would say that it needs a little bit more understanding towards solving the source itself rather than stopping all the industries altogether, because we have to understand it is us as a consumer that actually ask for industries to be existed in the first place. So this is why industry are serving the demand. So if, let's say, for example, we cut off the demand, this is where we can see that this pollution effect would be stopped altogether. But in actual fact, it will not, because the demand is always there, unless, my personal opinion, if you have a replacement products, let's say for example waste to energy plants or basically renewable energy sources that we can comply or apply towards the operation of any industrial zones, then that would be much more better aspect in terms of reducing the pollution in itself.
Okay. Mr. Mahadi, would you like to add?
Yeah, I want to add a little bit more. I agree with Mr. Ammar said just now that it started all from the demand from the people as a user. If no demand, that means no industry people, industry player do something to serve the demand. So in a way, what we are going to do is we talk about the air pollution is very hard. It's not impossible, but I foresee the things we on the ground doing campaigning to what we call to the people down the road, schools, universities, campuses. We need some really tough campaign to make the people realize that this is very important and very critical to make sure our air is not polluted in the level that harmful people. So in this case, I agree with Mr. Ammar that the policymaker especially, even we know that policymaker will have together with the business people, and then towards the end, policy is a policy, but yet we can see, because I'm doing a training with the Department of Environment, and then a lot of my friends, they're telling me the truth, the real story, what is happening on the ground. This policy, the A side, but what happened beside the policy. So this is what the thing that we must very hard and tough to make sure the policy being abided by the business people, by the user, and at the same time, the campaign, going green, campaign to the people down there, we must do again and again in a very new tactic, new manner, so that this is a serious matter that can see by the people everywhere, so that everybody, every people, every organization can do together to save the world, especially the air pollution can be mitigated slowly but steady. Even in the long run, we can see that this desert people, the business people, we can't stop. We can't stop. Actually, in the case of Malaysia, the haze issue, until now for many years is not unsolved. Still there the haze every year. So what is the story behind that? The commitment. We need the commitment, because people down there still slash and burn. They need for a living. But the government cannot stop at all. The government have find a way how to educate the farmers, okay, to reduce the slash and burn, because the impact to Malaysia, to Singapore is very serious and critical. So if we take this case as our what we call lesson learned, so we may ask the government, the policymakers, or the business people, or whoever involved, sit down, look seriously, and do walk the talk. This is the only solution we can mitigate the air pollution, or else we just keep talking and campaigning. Thank you, Mr. Akram.
Do walk the talk. I think that's the line that came from Mr. Mahdi. Professor Chowdhury, your opening remarks joined us late. We discussed a couple of issues related to this. Maybe if you can set the floor for the next half an hour discussion.
Yeah, nice to see colleagues from Southeast Asia, from Malaysia, from Indonesia. I think a colleague is also from Saudi Arabia, right? So it's good to see all of you here in this program. I am Professor Ujjwal Chowdhury, Pro Vice Chancellor of Adamas University, Kolkata, India, and I'm from the field of communications. This is a very important issue that we are discussing one day after, immediately after the Earth Day. I really appreciate. Consumerism is at the core of the problem, is no doubt about that. A youngster in New York aims to have one denim every month, and to satisfy his demand, the workers in Bangladesh exploit the nature, are forced to exploit the nature, the
Yeah.
water, and the garment producers are forced to exploit the salaries of the workers to produce that denim cheap for the user in New York. Whereas the young man in New York does not need one denim every month. So the consumerism and its priorities have to change. The Malaysian shirt I'm wearing is bought the first time I went to Malaysia 7 years ago. It's still fine. It's good. We don't need clothes every month. We don't need so much of food that we use. Much of the food that we use is harmful for our own health. Forget the ecology. So there is consumerism is at the basic of things. I must put forth that there is no, as in life, anything we plan, there is a plan B, right? Plan A, plan B. There is no planet B. There's only one planet at this point where we are staying, that is Earth. So the World Meteorological Organization, day before yesterday, has given a statement in which it started by saying the way the world has united to flatten the curve of COVID, similarly the world has to unite to flatten the curve of climatic change. The climate change is so urgent as COVID or coronavirus,
COVID-19.
COVID-19. So this is what the World Meteorological Organization has said. 60% of the air quality in the three major cities of India are better than what it was in December 2019 at this point of time, after 3 or 4 weeks of the lockdown. The PM 2.5 levels have come down remarkably. You will be perhaps astonished. Delhi had a PM 2.5 level above 400. You are scholars of that field. You know that below 12 are good. Between 55 and 150 is unhealthy, but very unhealthy is 150 to 250, and above 250 is hazardous. We have been living in hazardous environment in Delhi for the last so
True.
many years, and
True.
today it is 60% down. It has already come down from very healthy to okay, doable. That sort of situation has come down. And WHO in its it has already told that 500 times than the mean, the global, the right mean PM level, the global PM level, only in Delhi it is 500 times. In Los Angeles and US in general, 50% lower than the last 3 years average now, air pollution. And in Europe, 20% fall has happened. Europe has been always little pro on environment and air pollution. You know that. So still, there also 20% has fallen. So therefore, this is but sure that we have to come back and last 5 years, if I'm not wrong, has been the hottest 5 years in the history of mankind. The hottest 5 years. Can we continue anymore like this? The average that has been calculated by experts like you, that this planet was made for 4 billion people. We are 7.5 billion now, 7.7 billion now, 7.7. And WHO, the World Population Organization, says that we will cross 10 billion by 2030. It is impossible. It is double the size, the actual, the normal, the ideal size of the population of the world we will be. So this is the time to even control population. Two people, husband and wife, should have one or two child, never the third. It is important. But then there are beliefs, there are culture, there are religious sentiments, and many
Religion.
other things that come up. But we have to really look at that also. So earlier whenever there has been economic crisis, and then there has been a recovery after the crisis, we have seen air pollution and generally pollution at water, air, and noise and everything have actually increased from what it was before the crisis. Can we afford to do this now? after this crisis. This is the biggest possible crisis. Nothing, I mean, we will see as we go ahead. The biggest unemployment ever in the world will happen through this COVID crisis. The biggest economic fall will happen. Already US has registered 7 million people unemployed. 7 million people have registered for unemployment benefits. India's Council for Monitoring Indian Economy has said 119 million people have lost jobs in the last 1.5 months. So this is a very big crisis. Now, after this crisis, we really have to at least control. Now, you know, you are experts. In pollution, there are two types of things: human generated, which you call as anthropogenic, and non-human generated. At least the human generated causes we can control. We can control the human generated clean air. There is a Clean Air Act in USA. There is National Ambient Air Quality Standards. This has not been accepted worldwide. We need to accept this. And you are in a better quality, in a cleaner air country in Malaysia. Indonesia has gone. Indonesia is very nature-wise very beautiful. In fact, I did not have the luck yet. I have not been fortunate enough to go to Saudi Arabia, but Malaysia, Indonesia have gone, and particularly Indonesia is a heaven if you see from Indian point of view, pollution point of view. In India's pollution is extreme. So
Right.
this is the time the world must unite. That policy changes have to be there. Air standards have to be created, national air quality standards. It has been already done in some countries like US and many others, and Europe strictly follows it. After Paris conference, there has been a climate action group, climate action plan, and in that India has committed that by in the next 10 years 40% of India's fuel of the vehicles will be from renewable sources of energy. But we are still 2%. Can you believe that? We are only 2%, whereas Israel has already made 98% non-petroleum, non-diesel fuel. Many other countries are following. Even Nepal has 18% non-fossil fuel being used. They have created solar energy on every rooftop. They have created solar panels. So it is important that we look into this. These are my initial views.
Excellent.
I have
Professor
come here to
Chaudhary, as
listen to
usual,
you. I have come to
making
learn from you, actually.
right. Professor Chaudhary, as usual, making a lot of points. I think someone is Professor Aga is sharing his screen, and he wanted to share something.
If you allow me, I believe that one picture worth 1,000 words, as they said. So, you mentioned one very important thing, that what is after COVID-19? What's after this pandemic? What would be the air quality? Is it going to go back, worse, or less? I will give you a hint about this. Before that, what I'm going to show you is this is some models, predictions, and real data from the European Environmental Bureau, which is non-governmental organization. As what you see is just one map of Fiji, which shows that from January 2020 to April, as you can see, the air pollution, which is more darker, more blue, would means more pollution. During the shutdown in January, February, it was mitigated. It was very nice. Coming after this has been relieved a little bit in the last slide, in the last in March and April, the levels become again back. This is not only for Fiji.
Hmm.
There is different countries. I give you different examples. This is another example. You can see from January to April, and you can Shanghai. You can see that how much is the pollution is coming back. This is the air quality index in terms of nitrogen oxide. Okay, so what I'm trying to draw attention here, as an academia, we can provide to the stakeholders a visible picture of what is going on and what will be after this. The aid of satellite imaging. Now, the European Space Agency is focusing on providing this data live from all over the world. So you can get this information to support your decision, what you are going to take. As Mr. Ammar mentioned, that we cannot stop buying things, eating, However,
Mhm.
we should think wisely that I believe that a lot of statistics will come out. So the correlation between air quality and this race, which country, which city had the highest rate of mortality because of COVID and the impact of air pollution. From my specialty, I can tell you frankly that in United States, for example, the first killer now about 1,960 deaths per month is per day, pardon, is because of COVID-19. It exceeded the heart diseases, it exceeded the cancer, and exceeded the traffic, which is not more than 450 deaths per year in the United States. It's a pandemic. It is related to our air pollution. Air pollution makes this worsen. It makes humans susceptible to get this virus and cannot make its own defense. This is the main effect of air pollution. Air pollution, as Dr. Wesam and my friends mentioned, cannot kill if it does not exceed very lethal dose. But before mortality, we have effects. It weakens our immunity. It weakens our defense system against these viruses. This is the main lesson that should be learned from this COVID-19 pandemic and its relation to air pollution.
Thank you. Excellent, in fact, view on this. Dr. Wesam, if you have any question you would like to ask or any direction you want
Actually,
to take the discussion.
yes, Mr. Akram, I just want to raise 3 points. The first one is regarding the industry. So the issue with the industry, yeah, I agree with Mr. Ammar that there is a regulation, and yeah, we can say that the majority of the industries will abide to the rules and regulations. But there is an argument which is like most of the businesses consider the controlling the pollution as a burden, means that they have to spend some money, right? And this is kind of considered to be an extra cost that they have to bear, right?
Hmm.
So the issue is we have to think in a holistic approach. The industry, the government, and the public. We need to see the damage that is being resulted from the air pollution, and how much cost to the community, how much cost to the environment, how much cost from the government as well. Because when we talk about the death cases we mentioned annually and globally, this is globally, we are talking about 7 million. You are not talking about millions of people being admitted in hospitals and how much they are paying if it's private hospitals, and how much the government is paying for the insurance, right? So all these amount, and if you relate that to the loss that we are now facing because of the pandemic and the lockdown of many countries. So what I mean is we have to look at the holistic approach, right? It's not only from the industry perspective, how much they will lose if they install some control measures for the pollutants, but rather on the holistic approach for the whole country, for the whole world, how much all of us will be losing due to the pollutants. So the next point is regarding the role of the NGOs. And it's not only about industrial emission. We also having difficulties and facing some troubles with the attitude of people when they practice the open burning and they like the agriculture waste or the solid waste. And this is also creating a serious issue, a lot of pollutants, carcinogenic materials, which was health impacts on the community. So those people need to be educated. Means we have to have more awareness campaigns through the NGOs and through the even the academic institution, and try to educate people on the seriousness of air pollution. And the third point regarding the issue that raised by Dr. Furqan, which is more on Dr. Acep, which is on the haze in the regional haze in the region because of the forest fires, which influence the region. Like yeah, many of us knows that these forest fires, like it occur in Riau, in Sumatra, and then this haze will spread in the region. And last year we have an incident, and in 2015 there was a huge incident of haze, and this caused a lot of losses economically and health impacts. So I agree with Dr. Acep that we have to have a collective efforts, a consortium from the researcher, from the industry people, from the policymakers, and also the NGOs, so that we maximize the efforts and try to propose and withdraw strategies on how to control the air pollutants, which damages and control, affecting everybody in the region.
Excellent. I want to present a couple of facts and then we'll go to the solution part of it, that we have to control air pollution and what all stakeholders, what kind of responsibility each should have, and then some macro and micro solutions we'll talk about. Before coming to that, I just want to give you some facts for our viewers. Again, I want to remind our viewers that we should be talking about this issue. This is the right question you should ask your journalists. This is the right question you should ask your policymakers, rather talking about some Islamophobic, some nonsense issues that goes on across the world. Don't watch too much of those issues. Ask these issues and learn these issues, because this is how you can make your life better. You can make your society's life better. You can make your community's life better. Now, presenting some facts. Air pollution global welfare costs associated with premature deaths, according to the OECD report, is 3 to 18 to 25 trillion of dollars. It says that by 2060, the welfare cost that the countries will have to bear ranges from 3 to 18 trillion dollars. That's a humongous amount. Similarly, the kind of pain and illness welfare costs, if you are not taking care of your air pollution, ranges to up to 2.2 trillions of dollars. 2.2 trillion dollars is a huge amount. Coming about India and China, the air pollution, the health impact, like due to the air pollution, the diseases you can have, and for that healthcare cost, for China, for Europe, OECD countries is 1.7 trillion. For China, it is 1.4 trillion. For India, it is like $500 billion. India's total healthcare expenses is just 1.5% around, but the cost of not taking care of enough this air pollution issue, the cost ranges to 5.4% of the GDP. So we are spending 1.5% of the GDP, but the cost of not taking care of your health is 5.4%. That's the kind of magnitude. Al Jazeera report says India is home to 15 out of 20 most polluted cities of the world, and 700 million population out of 1300 million population are in grave danger with the range of health of crisis. So my point, my viewers, is that it is not about living a life. It is about all will die. But are you living a healthy life? The amount of economic cost that you have to bear for not having a pure air, and that is, so here the solution starts at the individual level, at the government level, at the industry level. Now, my point here: no one take the responsibility of this issue. Now, everyone thinks, okay, he is doing it. Government think, okay, I am taking a macro point. Industry is saying, no, I have to earn profit. So there are a lot of trade-offs. There are a lot of dichotomy. Industry say, I need profit. Government says, I need tax. Individuals don't feel responsible enough that what should I do. It is an industry creating this pollution. I am driving just one car, but there are millions of cars on the road. What should I do? This dichotomy, trade-off or opportunity cost, is the first barrier to any solution that we talk about. Your comment on this, and then giving some concrete solutions to address the issue. Professor Chowdhury.
Thank you for allowing me a second time to speak, and good to know the views of my learned colleagues. They are environmentalists, they are experts, and also Mahdi Saab is an activist also, it seems, GoGreen activism as well. Nice to know that. Having said this, um, we are the first of all, most of our countries, even before that, let me say, we often love, because we are all Asians, we always love to say Asia is the future of mankind at this point of time. So Asia would actually push the growth and development after COVID, because China, India, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Japan, these are very important nations. Because Europe is almost collapsing at this point of time as far as economy is concerned, and US is also in a bad shape. So by the way, Russia's figures are very bad at this point of time. Russia is one of the top infected countries all of a sudden. So now coming back, so if Asia has to give future to the world, and Asian population is on an average young, the health of this Asian population has to be protected. And the health of the Asian population can be protected only if environment, one of the major reasons is environment is protected. So first of all, a major investment in public health is important, which also in by corollary includes investment and protection of the environment. So this is my first point I'd like to put forth. Second, the forest cover across Asian countries is depleting, is decreasing, excepting some. And Indonesia may be lucky, and few other, Nepal is lucky. But then there are most countries, the forest cover is depleting. So one of the primary objectives is to protect and expand the forest cover. There is a huge mafia, timber mafia in India, who cuts off the timbers and all. The next point, obviously, there has to be standards. National air quality standards are not there in the country. We are following what World Meteorological Organization (WMO) tells, but we should have, according to our necessity and situation, each country must have their national air quality standards. That's the next point. Environmental science is taught in the classroom, but how does an individual contribute to that? Starting from whether you should have a personal car or not. Now, the problem is the disincentives to own a personal car are low in India. In Singapore, it is high, for example. In Singapore, the cost of the fuel is less, the cost of taxes are far more. And there are certain types of costs which are imposed on certain times of the day. So the cost of running a private car is very high. On the other hand, the public transport is very developed. The metro transport and the bus system is very developed. In our case, the entry barrier to own a car is very low. And on the other hand, the pollution is high and the public transport is bad. So every person considers it's necessary and a status to own a car, which is not the case in Europe. I was telling yesterday, in Netherlands, the number of population, the people are less than the number of the bicycles. Nobody steals a bicycle. Anyone picks up a bicycle, goes to the destination and keeps it there in the corner. The government has made corners for bicycles. So these are things we have to learn. So we have to come to a situation where, for example, therapy. Why are we following the Western therapies? We in South Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, China, India, we have our own therapies, right? Natural therapy, Ayurvedic therapy, the what do you call the therapies based on nature, from the products of nature. A lot of therapies, yoga, a lot of things are there. But we have taken, now I do understand in an extreme emergency, we need to take allopathic and chemical medicines. I do understand. But for the slightest of headache, we have started popping pills because this culture has been brought up. This culture has to be fought back. We have to fight back the culture of consumerism, the culture of chemical based life, the culture of artificial food, the culture of artificial farming. Even sugar is
Right.
synthetic, milk is synthetic. So these are some of the issues I would like to point before I listen to my
Specific to
learned
air
colleagues.
quality, if our experts can, from the country that you are from, if you can give some perspective, what kind of solutions or best practices countries are adopting, and what are the best solutions can we have on this? Maybe Dr. Furqan, if you can give us a view.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a good entry point for the COVID-19 for our mutual commitment for our pollution reduction. And I think it will be nice if we can make something mutual commitment in regional, for example, to reducing the air pollution. For example, we should have a target until 5 years later, for example, how many percent we can reduce. It's okay, for example, the target every year is how many percent, 5% or something like that. So, and up to 5 years, we can make a healthier regional something. And yeah, punishment and reward should be there. And I think the academic and industry can be leader to this commitment, because this is our our word same. We stay in the same word. So I mean, we should make a good commitment for that. And we can make a pushment, something scenario. We should show to them, or to show some policymaker some scenario. If until 5 years there nothing changed, it will be really problematic for us. Something we should have target, and it's written by
Right.
all.
We should make a commitment to ourselves,
Yeah,
regionally or
yeah,
country.
yeah. I think
That
something like that.
industrially, that's the point I like. Mr.
Yeah,
Omer.
Okay, so just to add Dr. Purqon's point of view just now, which is very, very good. Just want to share with you how beautiful Malaysia is, conducting its own Malaysian ambient air quality guideline at the moment, because we have been implementing the guideline since 1989, and we have changed that into the Malaysian air quality standards a few years ago. And what we are actually doing, like Dr. Purqon mentioned just now, we have put it beautifully in an interim process that every single few years we would reduce the limit to a certain limit that was much more lower than the ones that we started off previously. So this is where I think through the policymakers' direction, I think in Malaysia specifically, if I could share with everyone in the group right now, it's very, very strategically good for us to implement in that sort of aspect. So just to brought up again, one of the beautiful thing that what Malaysian is doing through the agency, which is the Department of Environment Malaysia is doing currently, is that we have already changed our limit, industrial emission limits, specifically for air pollution from air pollution control equipments, that we are actually putting up a stringent limit altogether. So we have come up with the Environmental Quality Clean Air Regulation back in 2014, and we have seen such a reduction in some parameters. We have reduced it to nearly half of that concentration, which in turn would actually ask the industrial players to spend more. And one of the point that Dr. Wesam, which I very like to approach right now, is that yes, to the industrial players, air pollution control or any pollution control equipment are basically non-revenue items. All right, so you have to spend in not making any profits. But in actual fact, when I discuss with my clients, there are actually another set of ideas saying that if they can control their emission, even so to a more stringent limit compared to the actual limit that they have to comply to, the profit will not come in terms of the benefit for the company, but also for the reputation and also for the public nearby their industrial area. So the profit in this kind of aspect is totally in a different kind of perspective altogether. And yes, we have to make sure at the very end, like Mr. Mahadi mentioned, we have to educate our young right at home. That is the most critical part, because if we don't educate our young right now, we won't expect this pollution to solve anytime soon whatsoever.
Yeah.
So this is why I think it's important. It must start at school. Okay, it must start at school, and also, and very importantly, for my kids as well, I start to educate my kids about recycling at home and why is it important. All right, besides getting money in recycling at the same time. So
Exactly.
again, exactly. So these are the kind of aspect that we should make sure in order for us to mitigate the pollution control measures, in the future. And just to share with you what Malaysia is doing through the Department of Environment again, we have implemented, if you want to install an air pollution equipment in your plant, you have to make sure that it's designed properly. It's been designed by a registered professional engineer. In order for you to install, you have to apply for a permit or approval for you to install prior to the installation. And after you install, you have to submit a build drawing, a final build drawing of the facility, to make sure that you have built according to what you have submitted before. And furthermore, you have to conduct a periodic sampling, as what you call it, to make sure that you comply with the regulation. And some of the premises, we need to install even the continuous emission monitoring system, which is an electronic device. You imagine, you put an electronic device to measure the sort of pollutants that emits every single time. So you have no excuse, whether it's day or night. No industry could cheat or could escape this kind of implementation, whereby all these readings will be recorded and be sent to the authority, which is in this case, in our case, is the Department of Environment, where they would basically relegate and see whether the compliance is being made all and every single time or not. So this is where I think the governance needs to be there. If there is a policy with no governance, I think there's no good value in everything altogether. So that's why I think in Malaysia we have done so well into managing these two and making sure that the environment here are being kept safe for all of us.
Okay, so from Malaysia again, view from Mr. Mahadi.
Yeah, Madhoun, well said, Mr. Ammar. I'm very sure our friends from DOE very happy to hear that we are doing our right thing in Malaysia in terms of controlling the air pollution. One more I want to add up again. I want to stress, come back to the people down the road at home. The education, the campaign is a serious and critical matter, which at the moment, from my experience and my friends' experience, still lacking in campaigning so that people realize that air pollution is a really critical and serious issue. If we can put this idea to the people, most of the people, then the movement can give the impact. Number two, the industrial people, as Mr. Ammar said just now, of course, we can control the businesses from the policy makers. But again, when you talk about business, the dollar and cents come first. So they can find a way how to make money, and out of that, there is the cost for pollution. So it's still the user, like people, like the people now must be trained, must be educated, must be informed well that they must do something. In a way, there is one campaign that we are launching tomorrow. Start from the first Ramadan, that during Ramadan 30 days, the Muslim all over the world, billion of Muslims all over the world, will do a Go Green campaign. In a way, reducing smoking, reducing food, and everything will reduce. So this is what we call the contribution for the Muslim people, billion out there, started from tomorrow. We are purifying the air all over the world, inshallah.
Excellent initiative by the GoGreen Professor Omer. So your suggestions, what is Saudi adapting? What kind of strategies Saudi have adapted, or Middle East overall they are adapting to fight this air pollution?
Um, yeah, actually, Saudi Arabia is a part, the largest country in the Middle East and in the Gulf area. Uh, in terms of economy, about 12 million barrels per day production, about 23% of the raw material for industry, plastic industries, for example, petrochemical industries coming from Saudi Arabia. For that reason, Saudi Arabia, for the first time, they established a ministry of environment just 4 or 5 years ago. Now, all the legislation in Saudi Arabia now is being refined and making in the benefit of the environment. I would like to draw attention that Saudi Arabia adapted the Vision 2030, which is mainly focused on sustainability. This is the thing I think we at the beginning of this meeting we just touched the sustainability, but what we are talking about is the core of sustainability. Sustainability based on three things.
Yeah.
It is in balance. The economy, the environment, and society. These three should be in balance. In Europe, nothing now is being brought to the market without life cycle assessment from cradle to grave. They analyze every aspect, impact on the ecosystem, on human health, or global warming. In Saudi Arabia, there is the petrochemical, which is could be one of the largest pollutants, is confined in what we call it industrial areas, Royal Commission of Jubail and Yanbu, one of the most developed industrial areas in the world. And in the environmental aspect, it is one of the strangest. Imagine they have their own law, different than the environmental laws that is applied in Saudi Arabia. Very strange. They are using all types of EMS, stack monitoring. They are applying a lot of monitoring stations, about 21 monitoring stations, ambient air, stack emissions, every kind of thing that are taken in place just to ensure that this industry does not affect the health of the people, because the human, as Allah granted us, we are on earth just to make it good. We need to work to make this all the aspects of environment good, just for us to worship Allah. So, in our belief that we need to focus more, I agree with Mr. Ammar that there should be in every country, besides the standards, I assume that each country has its own standards or adapting some external. They should set what we call a target. This has been done in the European Union. We call it directives for air quality mitigation from 1970s up till now. Three directives have been passed for mitigation of air pollution. I think this is a good strategy. And I think this one recommendation should be focused on all over the world, on to set local, national, if you can mitigate by 5%, no matter, but make it consistent, make it sustainable. So in Saudi Arabia, besides the natural dust storm, we don't have any major issues with emissions. So there is monitoring, there is reduction. We could say that the emission from traffic has been mitigated, and we could tell more information within the upcoming month. Maybe we could have another meeting just to give
Absolutely.
what the outcomes that we got before and after this shutdown.
Thank you. Dr. Wesam, would you like to conclude the session by giving your remarks? And then maybe I'll close it.
Okay, again, I would like to thank everybody, and Prof. Omar, Mr. Ammar, Mr. Mahadi, and Dr. Chief for joining us. And this was like an interesting discussion. Many topics was raised, and then I think all of us agree that we have to do something on trying to reduce the emissions, whether we are talking about traffic emissions from the industry and the role of the NGOs on educating the public on the seriousness of the air pollution, and also on the regional collaboration on some of the transboundary pollutants. And then we might have a successful strategy to reduce the emissions, not only locally, but on the global aspect.
Excellent. Professor Chaudhury, I think, wants to say something.
I just wanted to say very good points and very action driven points you have all brought. I would like to put before everyone that we need, I mean, you all know it. I'm talking of the world at large, society at large, the environment in which we are staying. We need a different philosophy of life now going ahead, which focuses on the green option of everything. So the vehicles need to have the green option. So there are certain mechanical aspects and there are certain fuel aspects. So green fuel. So the green options, when we create energy for consumption for industries, the green options. When we create medicines, the greener options. So when we create cosmetics, there are greener cosmetics, herbal cosmetics as opposed to chemical cosmetics. So for every aspect of life, now buildings, one of the major source of air pollution is buildings in India. So
Construction.
there could be alternate building structures, building systems, and there are green buildings with lot of light and lot of glass and many other aspects. Modular building, like China created a 10,000 patients, a 10,000 bed hospital within just 10 days using modular structure. So can we create a green alternative to every aspect of life? Green education, like doing half education at home and half education at campus and not every day going. Green healthcare. So every aspect we need a green philosophy as an alternative way to go ahead.
Excellent, Professor Chaudhary. I would like to conclude the session here. So, with just one point, this is a perfect, we are at the perfect stage to start our life with some new additions, new initiatives. I think what Professor Umar said, that sustainability is the combination of economy, uh, environment, and society. So, I think today we give too much of importance on our growth on the economy front, and just because our greed is often takes center stage over our need, I think now it is time that we should give equal weightage. Like, if economy, environment, and society is there, 33.33% weightage should be given into all these three. And policy times with the University of Tun Hussein on would like to bring, and will come every week to talk on this issue, and we'll try to reach out to all the policymakers, industry, and we'll engage NGOs and activists to actually create awareness from today, because this is a perfect stage that we can launch a new campaign for a new world. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching us. Tomorrow we meet at 5 p.m. With an expert from Iran. We will talk. Iran has recently launched military satellite. What so we'll be connected with one of the most powerful leaders from Iran at 5 p.m. At 6 p.m. we'll be talking. We'll be connected with some Muslim leaders, and we'll talk about the Ramadan guidelines at this important juncture. Thank you so much, experts, for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you so much. Keep
Ramadan
watching.
Mubarak.
You too, to everyone.
Ramadan Mubarak to everyone.
Thank you so much. See you again. Ramadan Mubarak and Ramadan GoGreen, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Just okay. So thank you so much.